My name is Lauren Carter, and this morning, my name was trending on Twitter. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window of my Manhattan apartment, mug of coffee warming my hands, watching the city breathe under a pale golden sunrise. Somewhere below, taxis honked, horns overlapping like a chaotic symphony. My silk blouse brushed softly against my skin as I shifted my weight, the faint lavender scent of my perfume following me. The headline still sat open on my laptop. Lauren Carter's memoir hits #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list. I should have been celebrating champagne, confetti, the works. Instead, my phone buzzed on the marble counter for what felt like the 100th time this morning. I already knew who it was. Maya. Maya, the girl who sat behind me in sophomore English, who used to mimic my drawl every time I dared to read aloud. Maya, who taught half the class how to laugh like me. The text preview glowed on the screen. Hey, saw the news. Can we talk? My chest tightened. 10 years of work, 10 years of silence, and she chose today to break it? I sipped my coffee, letting the bitterness steady me. I had everything now, a penthouse, a book deal, a future booked with speaking tours. But a small part of me still remembered the sting of those classroom laughs, the way my tongue felt heavy in my mouth as I stumbled through words. And maybe, just maybe, I wanted her to see who I had become. I was 15 the first time I realized my voice could make a room laugh, not because I was funny, but because I sounded different. Our teacher, Mrs. Hargrove, had asked me to read a passage from To Kill a Mockingbird. My palms were damp against the paperback, the edges curling from how tightly I gripped it. I cleared my throat, heart pounding, and began. Atticus said to Jem one day. I didn't even get through the first line before I heard it, the stifled snickers, the shuffle of sneakers under desks. I kept going, cheeks burning, my southern vowels stretching longer than I wanted them to. And then Maya, perfect, popular Maya, chimed in from behind me, mimicking every word I spoke, exaggerating my drawl until the whole class was laughing. Atticus sighed to Jem one day. The room roared. I wanted to disappear. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to keep reading until Mrs. Hargrove told Maya to be quiet. It didn't matter. The damage was done. After class, I hid in the girls' bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink so hard my knuckles turned white. My reflection stared back at me, flushed, humiliated. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my grandmother, who always seemed to know when something was wrong. They laughed at me, I admit it, my voice breaking, because of how I talk. Grandma just nodded, stirring her tea. Honey, don't you ever let them make you small. Your voice is your story. One day, you'll make them listen. She reached into her knitting bag and pulled out a small leather journal, its cover soft and worn. Write it down, she said, pressing it into my hands. Every word you're afraid to say out loud, write it here. One day, you'll say it all without fear. That night, under the glow of my bedside lamp, I opened that journal and wrote 3 words. I will show them. It wasn't a loud vow. It wasn't even angry. But it was enough to shift something deep inside me, a promise to myself that I wouldn't always be the girl who hid in the bathroom. I kept that journal close, tucking it under my pillow, every night like a secret weapon. At first, it was just angry scribbles, words I wished I could shout back at Maya, whole conversations I replayed in my head, but never had the courage to say out loud. But soon, the pages filled with stories. Little pieces of me, stitched together in messy handwriting. By the time I left for college, the journal was full, and so was the second one. I enrolled in a small liberal arts school 3 states away, far enough that no one knew me as the girl with a funny accent. My first semester was brutal. I worked 2 part-time jobs just to cover books, stayed up until 3 a.m. writing essays, and sat in speech lab practicing words I'd mispronounced my entire life. But there was something freeing about starting over. One night, I signed up for an open mic at the campus coffee house. My hands trembled so badly I almost didn't go on stage, but when I finally read one of my short stories, the room was silent, not mocking, just listening. Afterward, a woman approached me. You have something special, she said, handing me her card. Her name was Evelyn Drake, a visiting lecturer and published author. Come see me during office hours. I think you should submit this piece. That was the first time anyone had called my words special. Under Evelyn's mentorship, I learned to refine my writing, to sharpen the edges, to make my characters breathe. She tore my drafts apart, but always with a glint in her eye that told me she believed I could do better. I spent nights in the library, drinking cheap coffee and typing until my wrists ached. There were so many rejections, more than I could count. Some days I wanted to quit, but then I'd remember Grandma's words. Your voice is your story. Slowly, things began to shift. I got my first acceptance in a small literary journal, just 500 words, buried in the back pages, but it felt like holding gold. I framed the check for $25. Then came another story, then a fellowship, then a writing residency. My world widened with every yes. But I never told the people back home. I posted polite, vague updates on Facebook. College is going well. Never hinting that I was quietly building a name for myself. When my debut novel was published, I cried alone in my tiny apartment, holding the first copy to my chest. By the time it hit the bestseller list, I had already finished my second book and was living a life no one from that high school hallway would recognize. Still, I kept my success quiet. Part of me was saving it, waiting for the right moment, waiting for the day I could look those voices in the eye and say, see, I made it. When the invitation arrived, it felt almost poetic. Alumni Speaker Series, Jefferson High School. The email read, we'd be honored if you would speak to our current students about your journey as a writer. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Jefferson High. The same halls where my voice had once been a punchline. The same classrooms where I'd learned to keep my head down and my words hidden. I clicked yes before I could talk myself out of it. 2 months later, I was walking through those familiar halls, my heels clicking against the freshly waxed linoleum. The smell of floor polish mixed with that faint, dusty chalkboard scent hit me like a memory I didn't ask for. The auditorium was packed. Rows of students, teachers, and a few faces I hadn't seen in a decade, faces that had once made me feel very small. And then I saw her. Maya. She was sitting halfway back, legs crossed, phone in hand. She looked almost exactly the same, except older, sharper around the edges somehow. When our eyes met, her mouth formed a small, tight smile. I took my place on stage, the microphone cool against my fingertips. Good morning, I began, my accent still there, but stronger, steadier, owned. My name is Lauren Carter, and 10 years ago, I sat exactly where you are right now. Back then, I thought the sound of my voice was something I had to change to be taken seriously. A ripple of curiosity passed through the crowd. I was wrong. I told them everything. Not the gossip-worthy details, but the truth of the journey. How I used to dread speaking aloud. How I wrote in secret. How I spent years working 2 jobs, writing until my eyes blurred, collecting rejection after rejection. And then I told them about the day everything changed. My memoir, Southern Silence, just hit #1 on the New York Times bestsellers list last week. And it's not just here. It's been translated into 6 languages, and next month, I'm heading to London for my first international book tour. Gasps rippled through the room. I saw phones go up, students whispering, teachers nodding proudly. And there, halfway back, Maya's face froze. I smiled, not cruelly, just calmly. I used to think I had to erase myself to be worthy of being heard. I said, my voice carrying clearly now. But I learned that the very thing I was ashamed of, my voice, is what carried me here. And if you're sitting here today feeling small, feeling mocked, feeling like you don't belong, I want you to know you can turn that pain into power. When the applause came, it was thunderous. Afterward, a line of students formed to talk to me, to ask questions, to take photos. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Maya stand, hesitate, and then make her way forward. Lauren, she said when we were finally face to face. Her voice was quieter than I remembered. I'll read your book. It was incredible. Thank you, I said evenly. I know I was awful back then. She glanced down, twisting her phone in her hands. I'm sorry. I guess I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I let her words hang there, just long enough for her to feel their weight. I believe you, I said at last. And I believe people can change. But it starts with actually doing better. She nodded, her eyes glistening. And for the first time since high school, I didn't feel small around her. Maya lingered as the auditorium emptied, her arms crossed loosely, like she didn't quite know what to do with them. I meant it, she said finally, her voice almost tentative. About your book. I cried when I read the chapter about that English class. I studied her for a long moment. She looked smaller than I remembered, not physically, but in presence. Back then, she had been larger than life to me, a force that could make or break a room with a single laugh. Now I was the one standing on the stage. I appreciate that, I said. But an apology doesn't erase the years it took me to believe in my own voice again. She nodded quickly. I know. And you don't owe me anything. I just wanted you to know I'm proud of you. I exhaled slowly, then motioned for her to sit. When she did, I joined her, no stage between us now. Maya, I said, softer now. You have no idea how many nights I sat awake wondering if I was just broken. I don't hate you for what you did. But if you really mean what you said, then I want something from you. She blinked. Anything. Stop making fun of people for things they can't change, I said. The way they talk, the way they look, the way they dream. You don't have to spend the rest of your life apologizing to me, but you can make sure no one else leaves this school bathroom crying the way I did. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. I can do that. And if you ever see someone with a voice like mine, with a voice like I had back then, I want you to be the person who encourages them to use it, not silence it. Something shifted in her face then, something softer. You have my word. I stood, brushing imaginary dust off my slacks. Good. Then we're square. As I left the building, I ran into Mrs. Hargrove, my old English teacher, now a little grayer, but still with that sharp-eyed look of someone who remembered everything. I knew you'd do something big one day, she said warmly. Thank you, I replied. Then, after a pause, tell your students their voices matter. All of them. She nodded, her hand squeezing mine briefly. Walking back to my rental car, I felt something settle inside me. This wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was something better. A reclamation. For the first time in years, my voice felt entirely mine, not something to hide, not something to sharpen just for approval, but something to wield. That night, back in my Manhattan apartment, I pulled out the journal my grandmother had given me all those years ago. The leather was softer now, its corners frayed from being opened and closed so many times. I flipped through the pages, seeing my younger self staring back at me in messy, slanted ink. The girl who had promised, I will show them. I smiled. On the last page, I uncapped a pen and wrote, slowly and deliberately. I showed them. But more importantly, I found myself. I closed the journal and set it back on the shelf where it lived, between the framed photo of Grandma and the first copy of my book. The city outside my window sparkled, the kind of night where the skyline looked like a promise. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Maya, but a message from a girl named Clara, a junior at Jefferson High. She had sent me a photo of herself holding my book, grinning. I've been scared to read out loud because people make fun of my lisp, her message said. But after hearing you speak today, I think I'm going to try again. I pressed a hand over my heart, feeling something warm and deep settle there. This was what it was about. Not just proving people wrong, but showing the next girl that she didn't have to wait 10 years to believe in herself. I typed back, your voice is your story. Don't ever let them make you small. Then I put my phone down and poured myself a glass of wine. As I stood at the window, looking out over the glittering city, I said it out loud. Not for Maya, not for my classmates, not even for the world. Just for me. They mocked my accent once, I said softly, smiling at my own reflection. But now, the whole world listens to my voice.